to have the audacity, the stupidity to take a driver out of bounds on the left, little stream, little berry burn running down the right fairway 40-odd yards wide.
There's no way you hit driver in your hand. If you're his caddy, you break every club but the wedge and the putter.
Everybody thinks of Jean Van de Velde and what happened there, unfortunately, but it's something people remember.
On July 18th in 1999, a man was standing barefoot in a freezing Scottish creek. He had black trousers on, rolled up to the knee, water rising around his ankles. He was staring at a golf ball on the sandy bottom of the Barry Burn. 50,000 people were watching in silence. In the BBC booth above this man, a broadcaster said what everyone else was thinking.
No, what are you doing? No, Jean, please, would somebody kindly go and stop him? Give him a large brandy and mop him down.
This man standing in the creek had a 3-shot lead at the Open Championship. He had been the best golfer on the planet for 3.5 rounds at the most brutal course in the history of this tournament. His name is Jean Van de Velde. And before we explain a single thing about what happened on this hole, you need to know one thing about this man. What happened on this hole was not a choke like everyone else in the world usually claims. Van de Velde said he wanted to win the Open Championship, like D'Artagnan. 25 years after Carnoustie, every journalist who covered this story landed in the same place. Van de Velde choked. He made 3 catastrophically stupid decisions and threw away the Open. His name became shorthand for collapse. But one of golf's most respected analysts completely disagrees. Scott Murray, writing on the 12th anniversary of Carnoustie, said it directly. I don't think he bottled it. This is the story of why Murray was right and why what happened in 1999 at Carnoustie wasn't a choke. And it's also something else. Something the choke narrative has spent 25 years stopping you from seeing. Whether he intended to or not, Van de Velde manifested his actions straight from a Greek tragedy. And 25 years after that moment, Van de Velde was asked if that moment still haunts him. His reply to that question stopped every single journalist in the room. But we'll get there. You need to know first how this all started. Jean Van de Velde was ranked 152nd in the world entering the 1999 Open Championship. He had won exactly 1 European Tour event in his professional career. He was French, and France had not produced a serious major contender in decades. He was not Tiger Woods, who was 23 years old and playing some of the most dominant golf anyone had ever seen. He was not a David Duval either, the world number 2. Nor was he an Ernie Els, a 2-time major champion. He was the man nobody was watching. But here's what the records show. Jean Van de Velde played 71 holes of the 1999 Open Championship in brutal, windswept, punishing conditions, and he was better than every single one of the other players. And he did it the only way he knew how. He attacked relentlessly. There is a phrase that explains the entire 18th hole before a single shot is hit. It comes from Van de Velde himself. He said he wanted to win the Open Championship like D'Artagnan, the swashbuckling musketeer from Damas, the romantic French hero who fights with flamboyance and total disregard for the cautious path, the man who charges when others retreat, who attacks when others defend, who draws his sword when the wise man would sheath it. That is the man about to stand on the 18th tee of the 1999 Open Championship with a 3-shot lead. Keep that in mind because it's a key to everything else. Carnoustie is not a golf course, it's a punishment. It's a links circuit on the east coast of Scotland where the wind comes off the North Sea and the rough can swallow a golf ball whole. The pot bunkers are so deep a player can disappear into them, and the Barry Burn, a narrow, cold, indifferent creek, crosses the 18th fairway twice. It has no interest in how much the Claret Jug means to you. The 1999 Open was played in conditions so brutal that the scoring average for the week was 78.1, the highest in Open Championship history. Tiger Woods finished tied for 19th. Greg Norman, a 2-time Open champion, shot 293 for the week. Carnoustie did not care who you were. It destroyed everybody equally. When the final round began on Sunday morning, the man in 10th place was 10 shots off the lead. His name was Paul Lawrie. That detail will matter very soon. John Van de Velde woke up on Sunday morning, July 18th, 1999 with a 5-shot lead at the Open Championship. He had never before been in contention at a major. He had never felt the weight of a major championship Sunday, and yet he had led this tournament wire to wire, attacking every shot, playing true to the D'Artagnan instinct that had shaped his entire game. He had not built this lead by being careful, in fact just the opposite. Van de Velde had played the first 17 holes of the final round the same way. Mistakes, pars, and birdies. He ground through the most brutal course in Open history, and by the time he walked to the 18th tee, he still led by 3 shots. 3 shots with 1 hole to play in the final group. For even the worst ranked player in the PGA Tour at the time, this would have been a shoo-in for a victory. He needed nothing more than a double bogey 6 to become the Open Champion Golfer of the Year. Think about what 3 shots means. In 18 holes of major championship golf on the hardest course in Open history, he had absorbed everything Carnoustie could throw at him and still arrived at the last tee with a 3-shot cushion. That is not a man falling apart. That is a man who has been magnificent. The 18th at Carnoustie is a par 4. Out of bounds left, the Barry Burn crossing the fairway twice, deep rough on both sides. Van de Velde pulled out the driver. Before you call that stupid and align with every single commentator for the last 25 years, consider what Scott Murray argued. Van de Velde had been playing aggressively all week. The decisions he made on the 18th hole were consistent with the strategy that had put him in that exact place. He hit driver because he had been hitting driver all week, because D'Artagnan does not lay up. The flag was visible from where he was, but the Barry Burn was still between him and the green. He now had to decide what D'Artagnan would do next. And here's where the story splits into 2 equal facts that you have to hold true at the same time. The first is choice. Van de Velde pulled a 2-iron. He was still attacking, still going for the green, doing what he had done on every difficult shot all week. The second is fate. He hit the shot. It flew toward the green, then it struck the metal grandstand railing. A fraction of an inch either way and the ball bounces safely towards the flag. Instead, it ricocheted violently backward into deep, thick rough. Carnoustie was asserting itself. Van de Velde was now lying to in deep rough with the Barry Burn between him and the flag. He still had that 3-shot lead, and the swashbuckler reached for the sword one final time. His 3rd shot went straight into the water. Van de Velde walked to the edge of the Barry Burn. He saw the ball on the sandy bottom. He took off his shoes, he took off his socks, and he climbed into the freezing water. From the booth above, Peter Alliss watched and couldn't believe what he was witnessing. And Van de Velde? He later explained exactly what he was thinking. Half of the ball was outside of the water, so I'm gonna go and play. I mean, it's a bunker shot, literally. There's nothing to it. That's what you would expect from D'Artagnan. But soon enough, the ball went under the water. He had no choice. He climbed out, put his shoes back on, and took the penalty drop. He was now lying 4. His 5th shot found the greenside bunker. Lying 5 in the sand, he needed to get up and down just to make triple bogey, just to force a playoff. He hit his bunker shot to 8 feet. He stood over the putt, and after the railing and the burn and the freezing, rising water, he made it.
Would you believe it? Oh.
The crowd erupted. John Van de Velde pumped his fist. He had blown a 3-shot lead on the final hole of the Open Championship, and he was still alive. The 4-hole playoff would start soon between Van de Velde, Justin Leonard, and Paul Lawrie, the man who had started the day 10 shots off the lead. Van de Velde competed. He fought. He was D'Artagnan to the last, but the magic was gone. He made bogeys on the first 2 playoff holes and fell behind. Paul Lawrie birdied the last 2 holes to win the Claret Jug, setting the record for the largest final round comeback in major championship history that still stands to this day. And Jean Van de Velde, the man who had led by 5 shots that morning, who had wanted to win like a swashbuckling musketeer, who had stood barefoot in a freezing Scottish creek with 50,000 people watching, finished 3rd. He walked off the 18th green in the rain. Who will remember in 100 years? Well, it turns out that a lot of people will. Jean Van de Velde never won a major. His highest world ranking was 70th. He competed on tour for years after Carnoustie, never quite reaching those heights again. But he never stopped playing, and he never stopped smiling. He never stopped being D'Artagnan. Some years after Carnoustie, he went back. He walked to the 18th tee and played the entire hole using only a putter. He made 6 and laughed. In 2024 at the Senior Open Championship at Carnoustie, the same course, the same burn, 25 years later, a journalist asked him directly, "Does it still haunt you?" Jean Van de Velde looked at the journalist and said, "It never haunted me, and it's not about to start." Golf Digest called that the most grounded answer you can possibly imagine. Scott Murray's argument that this was not a choke was largely ignored, but it was right. Van de Velde was ranked 152nd. He was a player dramatically overachieving, making decisions consistent with the attacking game that had put him in front. He did not crack, and he did not choke. He simply played the game the only way he knew how. He wanted to win the Open Championship like D'Artagnan, and in the way that matters most in great stories, he did. I'll leave it to you to decide who's more content with the end of that story. Van de Velde for never compromising on the way he played the game, or Paul Lawrie, whose Claret Jug sits in his cabinet. One last thought to leave you with. D'Artagnan never won every fight that he had, but he certainly made every single one of them worth watching. Stories like this one are what this channel is built for. So if this is something you like, hit that subscribe button because there's plenty more.